Omaha Beach was hell. It became the most famous and most brutal image of D-Day, where American soldiers were cut down under brutal German fire. But Omaha was not the whole invasion. While that nightmare was happening, Canadians were being cut down at Juno. British soldiers were storming Golden Sword. And before the sun even rose, British glider troops had already crashed into France to capture Pegasus Bridge. The men who did not land at Omaha, but still walked into death. Before the first landing craft hit any beach on June 6, 1944, the operation had already begun. 6 hours earlier, in the pitch darkness just after midnight, 181 British soldiers crashed their gliders into the Norman countryside and stormed a bridge over the Caen Canal. They had no time for hesitation, no time for a plan B. Major John Howard's force landed their Horsa gliders so accurately that one touched down within feet of the bridge itself. Within minutes, they had it. The code words that crackled across the radio, ham and jam, confirmed that both bridges were taken. Pegasus Bridge was secured before a single soldier had set foot on any beach. And in taking it, Lieutenant Den Brotheridge led the first charge across the bridge and was mortally wounded by a German machine gun. One of the very first Allied soldiers killed by enemy fire on D-Day, dying in the dark hours before the world even knew the invasion had begun. Then the sun began to rise, and thousands of Allied ships filled the horizon. At Juno Beach, the Canadians were coming. About 14,000 Canadian soldiers landed at Juno, supported by thousands more sailors, airmen, and Allied troops, hitting one of the most heavily defended stretches of the Normandy coastline. Bunkers, machine guns, mortars, mines buried in the sand and in the surf, and rough seas that had delayed the landing, pushing the tide up and covering the German beach obstacles so the landing craft could not see them. Around 30% of Canadian landing craft were damaged or destroyed in the first assault wave. Men were already dying before they even reached the sand. The Queen's Own Rifles of Canada came ashore at the Nan sector of Juno. The preliminary bombardment that was supposed to destroy the German positions had missed, almost entirely. The bunkers were intact, the guns were ready, and the men of the Queen's Own Rifles had to sprint nearly 200 meters across open beach with no cover whatsoever, while an 88mm gun and multiple machine guns fired directly into them. Some assault companies were torn apart within moments, with men falling before they even reached the seawall. Can you imagine? Half your company gone before you even touched the wall. But they kept going. Company Sergeant Major Charlie Martin of the Queen's Own Rifles was 24 years old when his ramp dropped at 8:21 in the morning into a field of machine gun and mortar fire. His company charged the seawall, taking dozens of casualties in under half a minute. Then, advancing inland under fire, Martin stepped on a German bouncing Betty mine. He felt it click under his boot. He froze. He warned his men to get clear. Then he carefully extracted himself and kept moving. Minutes later, a bullet hit his helmet and rattled around inside it without killing him. He kept leading. He kept pushing. With his company already torn apart around him, Charlie Martin helped drive a company forward off that beach and inland into France. He was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal for what he did that morning. And then there was Leo Major, a scout sniper from the Régiment de la Chaudière, landing at Bernières-sur-Mer on Juno. On D-Day alone, he helped capture a bunker, took around a dozen German prisoners, and later helped capture a German armored half-track. He did all of this while fighting through wounds that would have stopped most men entirely. Leo Major would go on to lose most of the vision in one eye later in the war and kept fighting anyway. The Canadians also paid a price that went beyond the battlefield and into family homes in Toronto. 3 brothers from the Westlake family served with the Queen's Own Rifles. George Westlake was killed on June 7, 1944, the day after the landings. His brothers Thomas and Albert were killed on June 11th. 3 brothers, 5 days. One family from Toronto shattered in the fields of Normandy. By nightfall on June 6th, the Canadians had advanced farther inland than any other Allied force on D-Day. They had paid heavily. Around 340 Canadians killed, 574 wounded, 47 captured, 961 casualties in the Juno sector alone in a single day. But they had broken through Hitler's Atlantic Wall and pushed deep into France when every odd was against them. At Gold Beach, the British 50th Division was fighting through its own hell. Around 25,000 men came ashore, and many landed in deep water under fire, wading toward a beach where German pillboxes opened up from unexpected angles. The bombardment there had also failed to neutralize key positions, and it was here that Company Sergeant Major Stanley Hollis of the Green Howards did something that no other soldier on all of D-Day would be recognized for in the same way. Hollis was already a hardened veteran who had fought through some of the worst campaigns of the war before he ever reached Normandy. He landed at approximately 7:32 in the morning and immediately grabbed a Lewis gun to suppress German pillboxes before he even hit the beach. Inland near a place called Montfleury, two bypassed German pillboxes opened fire on his men. Hollis charged 30 yards across open ground under direct fire, rammed his Sten gun through a slit in the bunker wall, and emptied it, climbed to the roof, dropped a grenade inside, and cleared it. Then did it again. Later at the village of Crepon, two of his men were pinned down and facing certain death. Hollis charged again in full view of the enemy, using a PIAT anti-tank weapon and a Sten gun to draw fire onto himself and pull his men to safety. Stanley Hollis was awarded the Victoria Cross, the only Victoria Cross awarded for actions on D-Day itself. Just one, out of 156,000 men who landed that day. One Victoria Cross, and it went to a company sergeant major, not a general, not an officer, a man who charged bunkers alone because it needed doing. By the end of June 6th, Gold Beach had linked up with the Canadians at Juno, turning separate landings into one growing Allied front, pushing into France. Sword had repelled a German counterattack. Pegasus Bridge was held. The road into Normandy was open.